All right, so today we have Patty who's going to be discussing her caregiver experience with us. I'll let her introduce herself.
My name is Patty. I am a caregiver for my mom who has dementia, and I am pretty new on this journey. I have been her caregiver now for a little over 2 months, so I'm just learning a lot about myself. I'm also a kindergarten teacher in my career, so in the beginning, I was balancing teaching kindergarten and the caregiver, being really new to the caregiver role. And then come the end of August, I will be back kindergarten teacher virtually, and I'm trying to balance the roles. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so how long have you been a caregiver? And if comfortable, walk me through your diagnosis experience.
Okay. So I have been caring for my mom for a little over 2 months. So since the middle of May. My dad had previously been her caregiver. She got diagnosed with dementia about 2.5, 3 years ago. But over the last year and a half, I would say it's progressed to the point that she needs full-time care, especially because she has type 1 diabetes on top of it. So as you can imagine, that poses a challenge between um, trying to remember to do the insulin shots and counting your carbs and those things. So she required a lot of care pretty quickly just because of that piece. Um, the but 2 months ago, my dad actually ended up having to go to the hospital, and so since that day is when I just stepped in as a full-time caregiver for my mom, just because caregiving had been too hard for him, and it's also hard to be a partner and a caregiver. So that was too hard for him. And he also now has been diagnosed with some mild to moderate dementia. So he's unable to care for her. So
Wow.
it's been kind of an interesting process. Yeah.
Are you the sole caregiver
Well,
for both of your parents now?
no. So at this point, my dad is able to live independently. We're at the point where we're starting to think, what are the next steps for him? And then with my mom, we actually have a really wonderful hired caregiver in the mornings for 4 to 5 hours a day. And she is actually one of my friends, but she does caregiving. She's been doing caregiving for a while and is wonderful. So I do have that support. We were doing a lot of the care at my parents' house, but since I will be going back to work and we will be in my house full time, I thought it was important that they started to get comfortable in our space as well. So right now I am trying to support my dad in figuring out what his next steps are. So going to all of his doctor appointments, getting all of his medication, going grocery shopping for him, getting those pieces figured out for him as well before his disease progresses and he does require more care.
Okay, wow, you are tackling two. That is a first, at least in the interviews that I've done with different
Yeah.
people, is definitely a first in terms of
Yeah,
caring for both parents.
it's really interesting. And it's really interesting. I do have a sister, but she lives in Texas, right? So there's not a lot that you can do from a long distance. Like you can't be going grocery shopping and doing the prescriptions and doing those things and going to doctor appointments, right? Like those are just things that you are unable to do.
Yeah. Wow. So
Yeah.
in terms of I guess has your experience with your mother helped the way that you've been kind of thinking about things with your father?
Actually, it's so different. Like their responses to the diagnosis and their demeanor around the disease is so different. My mom is just the happiest person. She's just like so happy and willing to do anything. And so we'll be like, okay, we're gonna for a walk, or we're gonna go do this. And she's just like let's do it. You know, I'm like, we have occupational therapy today. She's like, okay, that'll be so fun. Whereas with my dad, I'll be like, okay, we should go to the, like, we need to go to the doctor. We need to get these things. And he's much more resistant to it. And like with my mom, we were like, okay, so Danielle's going to come hang out with you. And she's like, oh, yay. Like, we have a new friend. This will be so fun. And my dad's like, nope, I'm good on my own. So it hasn't helped because it's so completely different, you know, like it's just such a different response to, I mean, they're different people, right? And just, so it hasn't helped, you know, and my mom's just like, okay, like I have dementia, like I forget things, that's okay, you know, like we're just going on with our lives.
Oh, yeah, that is honestly very understandable just from doing these conversations with people. Every single conversation has been so different.
So different. Like in my conversations with people have been so different. And then just people's comfort level with different things or just, it's just been so interesting. Like that's one of the things that I've really been using, like Instagram and things like that, is to really connect with people because all experiences are so different, but we can all learn from each other because there are pieces, even though the situation is different, there are pieces of other situations that you can use to like help your situation, you know, like it's been so interesting. And like it's good too because then I hear other, like I'll be having a really bad day and I'll hear other people that are having not great days, you know, and I'm like, oh, okay, like we're all gonna make through it, you know, like it'll be okay.
So in terms of all this support that you're talking about, how did you go about it? So is it something that you kind of had that you used initially when your mom was first diagnosed, or is it this whole thing a new experience just now because she moved in with you?
So actually about 6 to 7 months ago, I noticed that my dad really, like, although he wasn't ready to admit that he needed help, like that he needed help and support. So I just started by reaching out to the local senior center, like, okay, well, the senior center helps seniors, right? So they just started to give me numbers of places to call. So then I called like Community Connections or 211, and I just like kind of started finding things because I'm like, there has to be resources out there. I'm also extremely organized. Like that is a strength of mine. So then it was like, okay, I talked to this person. So then I would like write it down. And then they like, I just was like, where is the person that I can connect with? And then just, I mean, like the biggest blessing of all was when I was looking for someone to help support with my mom, especially when I was still working. And then as I was thinking about going back to work in the fall, trying to hire a caregiver to be with my mom, like that is so hard to know how to navigate that and to find someone that you trust and like that loves your mom like you love your mom. And so it was just such a blessing that it happened to be someone that's extremely skilled and someone that I already knew and liked and treats my mom just as I treat my mom, you know, like loves my mom as much as my mom loves her,
Yeah.
which that is the biggest challenge. You know, like I talk to a lot of people and they're like, how did you hire your caregiver? I was like, it was like meant to be, you know, like it was just a blessing for our family. Like it just, I can't, like, I don't even have words for how nice that is, you know, like what a good feeling. And like she'll send me pictures during the day of what they're doing. And then on the weekends, we'll send pictures of what we're doing. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, we're all up in your life now. But I mean, I just started reaching out, you know, like where can I start? Because I knew I couldn't do it on my own. Like I have a husband, we're trying to start a family. Like I am a kindergarten teacher. That is part of who I am as a person, you know, like, I mean, I of course would give it up if I needed to, but it's also my identity, you know, like that's who I am. I went to school, I got my master's. I'm like, feel really skilled in my job, you know?
Yeah,
So
that's the thing. You have to also take care of yourself.
yeah, but I know myself. I know my mental health. I know my self-care. I know what's important. Like, and it just, I was like, what are the resources out there? But I also felt like I kept getting to dead ends. And I felt like that is just, there's such a need. And like, it makes me so sad because first of all, how do you navigate the system if you're like adults or parents or seniors that don't have kids or don't have kids that are involved, or don't have kids that are in the state, like you can't you can't navigate the system yourself at that point. Even in the beginning stages of the diagnosis, I'm 33 and I have my master's, and I'm like, I still got to points where I was like, I don't even know where else to go, you know? And it just makes me so sad because there's also this like middle pocket of people. Like there's people who like are well off or have money and are able to pay for all the care in the world. And then there's people who are low income and that's where they're at and they qualify for Medicaid. But then there's a huge chunk in the middle that don't qualify for state support, but don't have enough money for these situations. And so then you get stuck in this limbo, you know, like what do you do? Do you like, I just don't even know. It just makes me so sad. I'm like, I just want to help everybody. I want to like start like helping seniors navigate the system because it's just so sad. It's so hard.
Yeah, there's definitely no syllabus essentially.
No, and
Telling
every
you what
case
to
is
do and where to
different, right?
go.
Yeah. Well, and I was, you know, I've been going to my parents' doctor's appointments for the last almost year or so. I'd say like 6 to 7 months. I don't know, a while. And the doctor, you know, they work with senior citizens and they work with older people. And she was telling us like how often she ends up using her own time. The nurse was telling us to help these families get the like assistance they need because they don't have someone to help them navigate the system. You know, they show up at the doctor and they need more support. And she's like, I can't just send them home. Like, she's like, I think about it all night if I just send them home, you know, like so then she ends up helping them navigate the system. And I'm like, there needs to be more of that. And I know there are pockets of it, especially for like finding adult homes and those things. There's a lot of people that are great and wonderful and I've connected with them, but I'd say like trying to navigate home care and like just figuring it out is so hard.
Yeah, there's like a
That
lot of
is my
resources
biggest
in the late
challenge.
stages of caregiving.
Yeah,
But like, what do you do in the beginning? It's like, okay, now I have the diagnosis. Now what do I do?
exactly. And like, yeah, it's just so hard.
Yeah. So hopefully, so that's what I think like our company is trying to help fill the gap slowly but surely.
Yeah,
Even just
for
like talking
sure.
to different caregivers and getting their experience because it's so different for every single
Yeah,
person. That's
yeah,
a good thing. Hopefully it's like leading to
yeah.
something bigger.
Exactly. I mean, just another tool in people's toolboxes, right? Like, I mean, that was kind of one of the first things I started to look for when I like what apps are there out there, right? Because everybody has smartphones. Like, what apps are there? And I didn't find a ton. So then when I saw your guys' thing, I was like, oh my gosh, okay, here's one, here's one. Like, okay. And then I was like, oh, it's like I'm gonna try to download it. And I'm like, oh wait, it's not out there yet. But I'm like, there's something like people are working on something, which is huge, you know?
Yeah. So in terms of, I know you said that you had such a hard time finding these resources. So how did you go about it? Is something like in-person support groups something you use, virtual support groups? And I know you said you used Instagram for just connecting with people. How did you go about that? How did you
Um,
go about switching through that?
so I did attend in-person support groups through the Alzheimer's associations, like at the senior centers, which was good and not super awesome just because it like the people that were in the support group were lovely and wonderful, but there was a significant age gap between us. So they were their partners had Alzheimer's or dementia. And so it was great and they were lovely and we could share experiences. But what ended up happening is they were like talking about things that they need. Like the one guy was like, I really just want an all white puzzle. And so like I would order him an all white puzzle on Amazon and like bring it to the next support group. And then the lady was like, I need to figure out how to sell my husband's car. And I'm like, well, I don't know, but let me ask my husband. So then I like connected her to someone to help sell the car. Like, which was great and wonderful for them, but I didn't feel like I was getting anything out of it that was like moving me forward, you know, like I felt like I was helping move them forward, which was fine. And they were so fun. Like I miss them, but then also COVID happened, right? So then support groups canceled in March, you know, like it just, the senior centers aren't open, nothing's open, you know? So then I was like, I need to find a support group. And then on Instagram, I just like, you start to kind of follow hashtags, right? And then I followed a hashtag that was like millennial caregivers. And I just started to connect with other people that were my age group. And I actually have my first support group that I'm joining this after this. Like I'm gonna finally get to join one. And I'm so excited. Just they are doing virtual ones. And I think even if it is long distance, like that's probably going to be more beneficial to me than the in-person ones necessarily, you know?
Yeah, because obviously it provides more access to various people. You're not just stuck with the
Yeah,
people in that location.
exactly.
That's amazing that you were able to
Yeah,
find all of these
yeah.
resources.
Yeah, and there's one girl that I've connected with a lot. Like we just our moms are really similar. And so her and I have like we connected via Instagram and then we actually like started to text and we are connecting our moms and they're going to be pen pals. So they've each painted a little picture and then we're writing cards to each other. So just another way to help connect our moms. So that's been really fun and just share ideas, like it's just really helpful.
That's amazing. I really appreciate how go-getter you are being about this entire process. Obviously, that's strength that some people have, and that's something that a lot of people kind of wish they had, but just
Yeah,
in the moment, the emotions take over, the stress takes over.
100%.
Um, it's very hard to kind of put things on like I guess like just put things visually and just kind of plan out everything is
Yeah,
easier for some people than others, which is a big thing. So in terms of organization, how I know you did say that you are on point and amazing at it. So what kind of resources do you use to kind of organize the caregiving aspect of your life?
so a lot of things like on the computer, right? Like, so I'm always making like lists and like charts and documents and things like that, and like Excel spreadsheets. And like I just keep a planner that is like on paper. It's just easier for me. Like once I write it down, it's in my brain, like it's happening. Those are the big things. And then, reminders on my phone. Like I also put everything on my phone. So then I have notifications for things. And then my mom and I do like just a week at a glance calendar. I have her help me fill out a calendar each week. So then at least if we're really focused on what's happening that week, I know what's happening, she knows what's happening, and then our caregiver knows what's happening. And she does a beautiful job of just like reinforcing, like, oh, I see that on the calendar it says you have physical therapy today. Like, so we're all using the same language and being really structured. But that's what I think would be so cool about your app, or like an app, or is that it could just be electronic. So it could just all be shared, like between even just me and the caregiver, or me and my sister. Like even that way, that would help my sister to stay involved, right? Like she could
Mm-hmm.
see what we're doing. Right now it's an additional step. Like I'm like, oh, okay, we have a doctor appointment today. Like she could just log in and see it, and my mom will text my sister, through me on the phone, or her friends, but I'm just like, that would be really cool for her to have something.
Yeah, so definitely our app currently has two different interfaces. One where we are, as a caregiver, you use the app and you schedule the events and the medications. You could send photos, and then the other interface is where the care receiver has the app, and they could actually see like, oh, what they have to do today. They can kind of click a button if they've completed their or if they went to their event or took their
Yeah,
medication. And as a caregiver, you'll receive a notification and a daily report
yeah,
indicating
yeah,
whether it's been done. And that's
yeah,
one interface, and I think it's super helpful for maybe like stage 1 to 5 in terms of the diagnoses. And then for later
yeah,
stages where the care receiver is unable to use a phone, or even the earlier stages when they just don't have a
yeah,
phone, the app is currently being hopefully to use kind of where the caregiver is also obtaining these notifications. So not just
yeah,
scheduling, but they also get the notifications. So I
yeah,
really appreciate that you're open to being opening
yeah,
to test our app, and we're really excited that you reached out
yeah,
on your own. It was so great. We were
yeah,
so happy because I think it was when our application was kind of getting traction and people were
yeah,
noticing, and it was just during that time, and it was just a great thing that you are being
yeah,
so open to it. So again, thank you for that.
yeah. I do have a question though. So could it be something like what I'm envisioning for like where we're at in the process is that it could be something that I could share with the caregiver that's with my mom during the day and she could have access and then like they could fill it out together, let's say like took the medication or went to this event or so that way it was just another tool that we had in our boxes around communication.
Exactly. So for us, like this testing the app is really
Okay.
for the caregivers to give us any insight,
Okay, cool.
how useful it is. You could use it in any way you like. So in
Yeah,
terms
cool.
of the functionality, the functions are there. So really it doesn't really matter who uses it, but you can
Okay.
use it the way you want it. So for example, if your caregiver, the one that who you hired, ends up using the other interface, then that's great. That's something
That
that
would be really cool.
yeah, so they can obviously indicate if the meds were taking
Yeah.
or if how you can even indicate how your mom was feeling in the app and it would come
Yeah.
down to you in your daily report. So that's definitely
That
something
would be really
that can
cool.
be used and they'll be really cool and it'll be really cool to get your insight and
Yeah.
we'll ask for your feedback.
Yeah.
Literally you can critique it, compliment it, whatever you like.
Yeah.
It's really to help the app be
Yeah.
much better.
Well, and then I just think of how many times people do like have caregivers or like, hired caregivers and how sometimes there are things you kind of want to share with each other that you don't want to necessarily say, you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
say in front, right? Like, oh, we pooped today or whatever, you know what I mean? Like those are just kind of can be feel awkward, So that way you could use that as a way. So I'd love to think about it as far as how we could use it to communicate.
Yeah, and like there's a lot of features that I'm sure you will think of as you're using our app that we don't have, and that's
Yeah.
something that we're gonna like put down on our list, and it's gonna be something that we prioritize in the next few months. So I believe that the actual app will be released next week or the week after,
Okay.
and then maybe we'll spend like a month-ish kind of getting everyone's feedback, and then we'll be kind of changing it as we go.
That would be awesome. That's a like really awesome timeline for me too, because it gives me time to really play with it before I go back to work and then to see how it is when I'm working. So like for
Mhm.
me, I'm like, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's super great. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
In terms of just so you've been used, so you know you use calendars and stuff for just organization. So what would you say you use for your own self? So self-care. And in terms of just kind of dealing with this diagnosis, especially now that you have it for both your parents, what is
Mhm.
something that you do that you would kind of maybe um, give some wisdom to other new caregivers that you've learned? Any lessons? It's a
I
big
would just
question.
say, I mean, it's really important to just like focus on your self-care as much as you can and find those breaks that you can take because it's not something that you can I don't think it's something you can do alone, right? So find the people that can support like my support group has blown me away. I mean, I can't even, the people in my life, like not necessarily family wise, like my friends have just stepped up and been amazing. At the beginning of the process, I just kind of I'm really an open book, clearly, but like I just let everyone know, like, this is what's happening in my life because I think people should know what's happening in your life. You can't connect if you don't know what's going on. So I just was like, this is what's happening. I'm caring for my mom. And one of my girlfriends actually said, well, have you thought about, because she's moving in with me and I didn't have things. She's like, well, have you thought about creating a wish list? And I was like, I haven't. And so I created an Amazon wish list and I just gave it to her like on the little Facebook and I like I like copied and pasted it in there. And it just like, we were getting things every day for like 3 weeks. And I actually just got one the other day, like yesterday. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like that was months ago that was posted. Like, how sweet. I just would say, like, reach out to the people in your world that you know will be there because you're going to have bad days. Everybody has a bad day, right? Like, I have a bad day, or mom's having a bad day, or my husband's having a bad day. Like, just reach out to the people because you can't do it on your own, and then really prioritize like what is something that you can do for yourself every day, whether it's work out or like take 10 minutes to yourself, or and really know like really focus in on your self-regulation skills. Like, what do you do when you get frustrated, and like how can you take care of yourself, because you can't take care of someone else if you don't take care of yourself, right? And like when my lid is flipped and I am done, like I need to walk away, instead of it doesn't, and like you can't do anything productive when you're like this. Nobody can, right? Like you're just like, ah, like, so I just think the biggest things for me were like reach out to your support group. Like they're more amazing than you realize. And the other thing is just schedule something for yourself, whether it's even 5 minutes of breathing or anything, and think about what I think those are the biggest things for me. Like, and prioritize yourself. Like, make sure you keep, like, you are also a person, it can't just be about the person you're caring for. You also have to care for yourself.
That
I hope that
is
answers
great.
it. What?
No, that was great. That is
I'm like, there's so many things I'm thinking about. Like, I have to stay self-regulated. Like, that's the biggest thing. I'm like, wow.
no, that's great. Just like, especially even just talking about your experience kind of makes you think about what you've done, what you could do, how you can improve.
Yes.
I'm just
Yes. And everybody, like, that's the thing. I just keep being like, you know what, I don't know everything. So also, what are the resources? Like, reach out to the doctor. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm going to reach out to the doctor and just see what the doctor, like, what does the doctor say? And she's like, well, we could do like home health where they could come in. I'm like, oh, someone could come in and like do a safety assessment of my house. Like, yes, please come in. You know what I mean? Like, tell me what I'm doing wrong.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Yeah. Okay, and I think our last question for you
Okay.
would be, what has been the most rewarding experience about being a caregiver?
You know, it was some tough couple years for my mom with my dad, just because he wasn't at a place that could be a super successful caregiver. So I've actually seen some really amazing improvements in her, which I know is not typical and not something that necessarily is going to last forever, but she is just like, she's just so much happier, and she's just really blossomed. And the coolest thing is for other people to really notice that. Like, my husband's always like, wow, that's so cool. And the caregiver was like, I noticed such a such a difference in her. And she's been here full time at my house for a couple weeks where we haven't been going there. And the caregiver's like, she's just so much more comfortable and happier there. And it just makes me feel so good that I'm creating such a warm environment for her, that it feels like she can really thrive and be herself. And that to me is like just wonderful. And we're just, just trying to have as much fun as we can together.
That's great. Wow, that's something that people obviously can look forward to, but also should also be prepared. That doesn't mean you can't take that to heart.
No,
You just
no.
never know. It's
Yeah.
such a crazy diagnosis.
Yeah.
You
Well,
take it
and
day by
it's
day.
so different, right? And some days are much more tough, right? Like, some days we're like on it, and other days we're just like, okay, well, we're just gonna nap and hang out with popcorn.
Well, thank you so much for talking to us, and we're really excited for you to use the app.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
We'll definitely be conversing again.
Okay, awesome. I look forward to it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, have a good day.